Tonight, you might have a drink, a beer, a glass of wine, something stronger. And if someone asks you why, you'll probably say something like, "I like the taste, I'm unwinding," or "It's been a long week." But that's not the real answer. The real answer is somewhere between 10 million years old and a clay jar buried in a cave in China. It involves rotting fruit, a genetic mutation, a religious ritual, and the single most important social invention your ancestors ever made. And when you understand what alcohol actually did for the humans who first drank it, you'll never look at a drink the same way again. Start with the thing that nobody tells you. You were built to drink alcohol. Not metaphorically, literally. Your body contains an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase 4, ADH4. And around 10 million years ago, your primate ancestors developed a version of it that was roughly 40 times more efficient at breaking down ethanol than anything that came before. Geneticist Matthew Kerrigan and his team published this finding in 2014. They reconstructed ancient primate enzymes from genetic data and traced exactly when this upgrade happened. It happened right around the time our ancestors came down from the trees. Think about what that means. When primates lived in the canopy, ripe fruit was everywhere. You didn't need to process ethanol because you ate fruit before it had any chance to ferment. But when your ancestors moved to the forest floor, the fruit they found was the fruit that had already fallen, the overripe fruit, the fermenting fruit, the fruit with ethanol in it. The individuals who could metabolize that ethanol without dying had access to calories that others couldn't touch. They survived better. They reproduced more. Over millions of years, that mutation spread through the entire lineage. By the time Homo sapiens existed, every single one of us carried it. You didn't choose to drink. Evolution chose it for you. Long before you were born. Long before alcohol was brewed, bottled, or sold. But that's only the first layer. Fast forward to around 10,000 years ago. Something strange is happening. Humans are beginning to settle. They're growing grain. And for decades, historians assumed the reason was bread. People wanted a reliable food source, so they planted wheat and barley and built the first villages around the harvest. Then, archaeologists started looking more carefully at the evidence. Patrick McGovern, a biomolecular archaeologist at the University of Pennsylvania, sometimes called the Indiana Jones of ancient beverages, has spent his career analyzing the chemical residue inside ancient pottery. What he keeps finding is not the residue of bread, it's the residue of fermented grain, of beer, of alcohol. The oldest chemical evidence of a deliberately fermented alcoholic beverage dates to around 7000 BCE, found in clay jars in the Jiahu region of China. McGovern's analysis showed a mixture of rice, honey, hawthorn fruit, and wild grapes fermented together into something closer to mead than anything else. This was not accidental. Someone made this on purpose. Someone knew what they were doing. And this raises an uncomfortable question for everything you thought you knew about civilization. What if the grain wasn't planted for bread? What if it was planted for beer? This is known as the beer before bread hypothesis, and it has serious scientific support. The caloric and nutritional argument for early agriculture makes more sense if the goal was fermentation. Fermented grain produces a drink that is not only caloric, but also, crucially, safer than water. In a world without plumbing, without sanitation, without any understanding of germ theory, standing water was lethal. It carried dysentery, cholera, typhoid. A fermented beverage was, in many cases, the safer option. The alcohol killed pathogens the human immune system couldn't identify. Your ancestors didn't drink instead of eating. They drank to survive. But there's still a third layer, and this one goes deeper than calories or safety. Go to Göbekli Tepe in what is now southeastern Turkey. This is the oldest known monumental architecture on Earth, a site of massive carved stone pillars arranged in circles, built by hunter-gatherers before the invention of agriculture, before pottery in the conventional sense, before settled life as we understand it. Archaeologists have found large stone vessels at Göbekli Tepe with a capacity of up to 160 liters. Chemical analysis suggests they were used to brew a fermented grain beverage. In other words, people were brewing alcohol at a ritual site before they were farming, before they had villages. They may have come together specifically to drink. Oliver Dietrich and his colleagues at the German Archaeological Institute have argued that sites like Göbekli Tepe suggest alcohol played a central role in the ritual life of early humans, long before civilization as we know it existed. The implication is radical. Alcohol may not be a product of civilization. Civilization may be a product of alcohol. Think about what a shared drink does. It lowers social inhibition. It creates a sense of trust and bonding between strangers. It marks a moment as significant, as different from ordinary time. In a world where cooperation between bands of unrelated humans was genuinely difficult, where trust had to be built and maintained without contracts or institutions, a shared ritual drink was a social technology. It was a way of making strangers into allies. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University has studied the social bonding functions of alcohol extensively. His research suggests that alcohol triggers the endorphin system in a similar way to social laughter, music, and physical touch. It produces a rapid sense of closeness that would have taken much longer to build through ordinary social interaction. For groups trying to cooperate across tribal lines, this was not a trivial advantage. This was survival-level social engineering. Your ancestors didn't drink because they were weak. They drank because they were solving problems that had no other solution available. And now look at where you are. You live in a world with clean water on demand, a world where pathogen death is largely solved, a world where you can form alliances with strangers through contracts and institutions and digital communication. The problems alcohol solved no longer exist in the same form, but the biology hasn't caught up. The enzyme is still there. The endorphin response is still there. The pull toward a shared drink at the end of a long day is still there. Because your brain doesn't know you have clean water. Your brain doesn't know you have HR departments and legal contracts and social media. Your brain is running a 10-million-year-old program in a world that changed completely in the last 200 years. That drink tonight isn't a vice or a virtue. It's a fossil. A behavioral relic of a world where rotting fruit was a caloric lifeline, where fermented grain was safer than water, where sharing a drink with a stranger could mean the difference between alliance and conflict, between surviving the winter and not. You didn't start drinking. Your ancestors started, and they had very good reasons. The fruit had already fallen. The water wasn't safe. The stranger across the fire needed to become a friend by morning, and the one thing that worked, that has always worked, was lifting something together and drinking.